Hey, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to take a model from 3ds Max into GTKRadiant and thus into game. I'm going to take this pine tree that I made and import it. So I have a Unwrap UVW modifier on both of these objects, and I don't have too many polygons, so it's fine. Just make sure you have a unwrap modifier. Also make sure that the model is on the 0, 0, 0 coordinates. You can do this by changing the pivot point. For example, for these branches, you can set the pivot point at 0, 0, 0 and thus allow it to be suspended in air. Okay, I'm going to export this then as MD3 first. Later I'm going to show you how to export it as ASE. And then we export 0 frames and leave the rest as it is. The error you get is nothing to worry about. Also make sure that you export it to your models folder in your base when using MD3. So here we have the pine tree, but it's not textured, and this is quite common, unfortunately, in 3ds Max. What you have to do now is probably just to reapply the material from a new slot. So I'm going to clear some of these slots that I used for generating all of this stuff. And I'm going to browse to my pictures, which I also have to put in my models folder when using MD3. This is one of the drawbacks of using MD3 because for one, you can't really use another texture if you export it with one texture. And the second reason is that you're able to point to other folders than the models folder in your ASE file, so you don't have to duplicate textures and put them in, for example, both the textures and models folder, because of the MD3 requiring to have it in the model folder when exporting. Then apply it without doing anything else to confuse it. Clear this and apply the branch texture. Then reapply it. Now when you export, it should turn up correctly. Now in GTKRadiant 1.5 you have this, you can just flush and reload shaders, or you could, you probably have to reload the model. You can click up here, refresh models, and that will make it show up correctly. Although now we run into another problem, which I kind of warned you about earlier. You see this thing going all the way down, far away down here, which we would never do that in our model. So it's too big. What we do then is just to scale it a tiny bit down and replace it back into 0, 0, 0. Now if we refresh it, it turns up correctly, and it doesn't have that weird deformation. You can notice, compared to all of these other trees, it's a bit small, so you can use model scale and type in a number greater than 1. 1 is the original scale, so if you make it smaller than 1, it will become smaller, like here, half the size. So I put 1.5, I can put it as high as I want, 1.8. Also, you'll notice that it comes on grid when we export it at the 0, 0, 0 coordinates. Okay, so the impractical side of MD3 is that if you wanted to, if you had another model that could fit with other textures, you couldn't really do that without hex editing and or re-exporting the MD3. So that's kind of the good thing about ASE models. Okay, so before exporting this as a ASE file, I'm going to clean up the material slot a bit, because it has many materials that I won't use, that I used for constructing this model. So the easiest way to avoid having ASE export all of those materials is to just check what you named these things, pine trunk and pine branches, save it and reset. Yes, I want to reset, and now it has completely cleared out all the slots here. So if you go import and merge, and you can merge it back in, select only the ones you're going to import, pine branches and pine trunk in my case. There it's back in, and what we do now is just to reapply these materials. Actually, branch material and trunk material. Then now we'll make it a bit smaller again, so we don't want that error. And I'm going to export it as ASE. And here it is. And you see now it has two materials. And what we need to do, we have to change the paths here to, or change the name to the path of the texture. In my case, it's models map object, and tree 1 for the trunk material. Standard is fine. I'm going to change material shading to Fong. I'm not sure what practical difference it has, but I've seen other ASE files have this instead. Map name, put the same path. And finally, in the bitmap, you will replace the all the way down to your base folder with 2 dots. So / models, etc. And then you do the same for the branch material. Let's see, yeah. And I guess that was pine stem 4. Map name, path. And here remove base and 2 dots. The rest should be fine. So we can save this, and in GTKRadiant, let's see if it works as it should. Select ASC from the list here to be able to see those. And there we go, ASC model. And as I mentioned, the advantage is that you can now go into the ASC file and change the paths to other things. Whereas in MD3 you can't do that. You would have to either export it again or do some very tricky hex editing with lots of limitations because of the length of names. They have to be equal. So that's also a good thing to use ASC files when sending things back and forth to people, because then they can use their own folder structures and their own setup. Okay, that's it for this tutorial.